So what levels of pressure on Putin and scenarios for Ukraine is the Donald Trump administration preparing? These topics we will discuss right now. This is our YouTube, World Politics 24. This is me, Irina Uslova, and today we have our guest, Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and communication instructor at the University of Wisconsin and a county supervisor in Rock County, Wisconsin. Yuri, hello, glad to see you very much. Thank you for joining.
It's my pleasure. It's a joy and quite a ride to join my experience of being born in Russia, in former Soviet Union, and being a local elected official in America, and bring it all together to try to inform our wonderful audience. Love it.
And explain the most current news for our viewers. On Thursday, January 16, explosions thundered in the center of Kyiv. Putin attacked the center of Kyiv with drones. Today, Kier Starmer, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, arrived in the capital of Ukraine for the first time. And you know, Yuri, I thought that isn't Donald Trump afraid that if he doesn't stop Putin, then if he wants to visit Ukraine, he will become exactly the same target of aggression and attack by the Russian dictator?
It's hard to imagine that there will be the same response to a British Prime Minister in Kyiv as there would be to President of the United States in Kyiv. In fact, for comparison, when I was in Kyiv back in August, it turned out that it was quite peaceful, relatively speaking, and it was because Prime Minister Modi of India was in town as well. So there's clearly, a totem pole of different politicians, and I think attracting that kind of angry response from Putin is a badge of honor, a badge of courage to come to Kyiv right now and to show support for brave Ukrainian people right now is as important as it's ever been. As we see in the United States beginning about to have a drastic change of direction, I think for Ukraine, it's really important to see who are their friends right now, because I think friends are those that go to Kyiv right now, in spite of threats from Putin's regime. So I think that this is a clear sign. Hopefully there will be many more other visits from other people showing their support, but it also highlights the difficult situation that democracies worldwide are in when we see that more and more strong men are trying to divide world into spheres of influence. Interesting where the Great Britain, with its imperial past, is now seeming like a beacon of democracy in 21st century, protecting democracy, standing with democracy. Let's see. I think that the irony of history is not lost on those who are paying attention, but it's a good sign, and I think that let's see more visits, more support. As the United States will stand back about supporting Ukraine, it will be ever more important for Great Britain, and Great Britain is also probably feeling kind of similar, closer to Ukraine than before, because we have Elon Musk, who's taking a very strong position against current government in Great Britain. So there's a certain push. There's a certain feeling, I believe, of change, of who our allies are and who our enemies and adversaries are, and this kind of a realignment that we see in terms of maybe less respect for borders, because now we just respect strength. It's important to see who is meeting with who and who sees value for their national security to be friends with which countries. And this is certainly a very interesting statement that will tell us a lot. That does tell us a lot about future of the alliances that are going to be built, that are going to be surviving, and especially considering possible withdrawal or changes that United States may attempt to do under President-elect or former President Trump. Again, it's another reason to why this visit is so important right now.
Yes, like clear picture, really, Yuri, who are our allies and who are our enemies. This week Biden mentioned that he was in Kyiv, but Trump didn't. Юрій, перенаберем. Можна не зупиняти. Так, щось
My
трішки вибило.
apologies.
Нічого. Let's begin again, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So this week Biden mentioned that he was in Kyiv, but Trump didn't. Doesn't this fact humiliate Trump or no, or he's indifferent?
It is an interesting question because I'm not sure that humiliation of Trump is what is desirable at this moment in order to get him to continue the policy that Biden embraced. I think one of the challenges right now for whatever was priority for Biden is to withstand the level of pullback that's now going to occur as the incoming Trump administration is going to look very hostile at anything that was supported by the Biden administration. So I think that there's already a level of not necessarily animosity or hostility, perhaps, simply from being towards Ukraine, simply because Biden chose to support Ukraine. Therefore, Trump was likely to not support as much. But Biden's as much, hopefully at all, will continue. But Biden's farewell address was interesting because I think, first of all, few people paid attention to a very thoughtful speech, which is kind of similar to Biden's administration. Because it was a very thoughtful administration with a lot of, it's more successful in terms of its legislative record than was expected, and really rose to the challenge of improving the economy and setting up the foundation for economic growth in the United States for many years to come. And yet the messenger himself ended up not being effective enough to deliver the message of how good his administration was for United States. And the speech was, I think, this farewell speech from the Oval Office was kind of a proof, another evidence of that, because a good speech, very well written as always, delivered. I am a public speaking instructor, so it's difficult, I think, to be an expressive speaker when, with advancing age. I think those are certain challenges that are going to be present there, but everybody ages differently. And I think that's why we have, election outcome that we do, in part. So President Biden's speech highlighted the dangers of the incoming tech oligarchy and a tech industrial complex, similarly to President Eisenhower, who, when he was leaving the White House, spoke about the dangers of military industrial complex. And then, I think war in Vietnam, for instance, as well as other wars that United States got itself involved in, was a proof of the importance that we need to pay and the attention we need to pay to the military industrial complex. That was absolutely correct, fair warning. So now we have President Biden that is warning us about both the influence and importance of technology and tech and AI, artificial intelligence, and how this is the race that the United States must win, which is absolutely true. But at the same time, it is also, he was also warning us about the dangers of what Ukrainians know more than most people, which is the dangers of oligarchy. And that is having a super wealthy person who is involved financially with the state, benefits from the state, influences the state, and essentially controls politicians that are beholden to that oligarch. And right now, it is a fairly new concept in the United States because Elon Musk has kind of suddenly emerged in this position. But this is a real, but interestingly enough, even Elon Musk has limits because while he is maybe an American oligarch, He's not necessarily Chinese oligarch because there he doesn't control the situation. So there's very specific American oligarchy that is emerging right now, combined with artificial intelligence and technology. And if we look at who is invited and is going to take part in the inauguration and the balls and who is sponsoring, it's a lot of tech support. So I think Biden sees the situation very clearly, all perhaps maybe too narrow in a scope, but it was an important message that I don't know how history will treat it. I think that we have to acknowledge it. We have to kind of what can I say? Biden did a lot of good things, but he didn't solve the problem. And then Kamala Harris lost the election. And therefore, by solve the problem, I mean the Russian problem. So we have Putin, who continues to be a threat. And we have a president who lost, whose appointed successor lost election. So that makes Biden look fundamentally bad, at least in the moment. How history will treat him, I think it's probably going to take a bit more time to determine.
The upcoming inauguration of Donald Trump, scheduled for January 20, promises to be a unique event that is already generating significant interest around the world. What are your expectations and are provocations possible? How do you think? Who can organize them? And one more part of my question. Politico reported that Trump's inauguration guest list is composed of global right-wing populists. What does this tell us about?
It tells us that in the United States, we only have two parties. And with a two-party system, if we don't have little segmentations. We just have everybody, and that affects things, and it has consequences. So now we have Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who supports all sorts of radical movements and parties around the world, including Germany right now. In Germany, that's a marginal party that is benefiting from Musk's support. But in the United States, Republican Party is one of our two major parties, and controlling that party is a far more efficient and effective way of perhaps even using Elon Musk money. But I suppose he has practically an unlimited amount, which is what makes him an oligarch. That money is no object. When it comes to inauguration, there's two components I see. First of all is the security safety component, and the second of all is the executive action that is planned by Donald Trump as immediately following him assuming office of president. As far as security, clearly a lot of attention is paid to this. This is one of it's the crown jewel of security because there's January 6th. There was the death of Jimmy Carter and funeral of Jimmy Carter, and now the inauguration, which is the big deal. And of course, all resources are put on this, and assumption is that it's going to be a safe event. But of course, safety will be off the chart, considering that Donald Trump was a target of two assassination attempts during his election campaign. But it also is expected to be quite a cold day in Washington, D.C., so maybe that will make a difference as well. But on the other hand, we have the component of all the executive action that Donald Trump is planning on his first day. And the list is staggering because it is going to affect everything from women's rights to federal employee union rights, and who knows what else, and everything in between. So I think that on one hand, we will have lots to discuss. That will be a very busy news day. There will be headlines from all over, every department, everything. And I think that's going to be the environment, the beginning of this second term of Donald Trump, which is going to fundamentally thrive on creating confusion and uncertainty, which I think is the environment in which Putin has operated for quite some time, creating this kind of a muddy water of uncertainty in which authoritarian strongman leaders tend to, as they say, catch their fish. And I think that executive action galore followed by mayhem is going to be the beginning of the chaos that we're about to step into.
Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, Andriy Yermak, said, I expect a meeting between Zelensky and Trump will take place very soon to discuss specific plans on how to end this war. What are your expectations for this potential meeting, and how important is that this meeting takes place before Trump meets Putin?
I have a nagging suspicion that to Donald Trump, the concept of ending war and there is no Ukraine is the same thing, and it doesn't make any difference. In a sense that if the war ends now and there is no more Ukraine, then I think as far as Donald Trump is concerned, the war is over. Hooray! Peace can now occur. Wait a minute, but Ukraine, well, peace can now occur. And I think that if I'm correct in my suspicion, then people like Mr. Yermak and others who have a much closer and better immediate knowledge of Donald Trump should, I think it seems pretty obvious that this is the attitude that Mr. Trump projects, because he constantly speaks about wanting to have good relations with Putin and understanding feelings of Russian people. Therefore, all of his assurances about wanting to end war quickly and I think can be just sent back to precedent. What did Donald Trump do first 4 years? First 4 years, he took our troops out of Syria, where we were working with the Kurds, and American troops left so quickly that there was still soda left in a refrigerator. There was a video I remember seeing on YouTube that showed that Americans have left, but there's still Mountain Dew sitting in the fridge. That's how quickly Americans can get up and leave when we're following orders. And according to Supreme Court, there is nothing illegal that president can do, apparently, or something like that. And we're also seeing that all sorts of secretaries that are being nominated by Donald Trump that are not going to object to anything he says. So this is a situation where Ukraine can be, of course, hopeful of Donald Trump's support. It's okay to be hopeful, but should not expect anything. Now, I have this, if we're going to talk about fantastical ideas, if we're talking about security warranties for Ukraine, why not just become, a state of the United States? Why not, because we're going to be living in this world of empires now. And Russian empire is growing, and America is going to be like, we want Greenland now, apparently, and Panama Canal. Why not have Ukraine take a radical approach to diplomacy and just apply to be 51st state? Because I think being part of NATO, if United States leaves NATO, it's uncertain. But being part of the United States, I think is probably a pretty good idea. On the other hand, considering that Donald Trump wants to have good relationship with Russia, it's crazy, but I hope we'll never see United States, apply to be part of Russia. So this is going to be some interesting times that we're going to see, and I think that old solutions may not be no longer applicable, and it's going to take a lot of creativity. But hope that Donald Trump will have something good for Ukraine is a way to feel better in a desperate situation that Ukraine may find itself. But it ultimately is just not helpful, because when people voted for Donald Trump, they were voting to end help for Ukraine on at least a financial level, maybe spiritually, thoughts and prayers with Ukraine. But as far as financially sending money, or specifically weapons, because of course money for the most part stayed in the United States and was turned into weapons for Ukraine, that's over. So how that's going to continue forward, and what assurances can Mr. Yermak hope for from Mr. Trump after Mr. Trump stood in the way of Congress voting to help Ukraine with the last packet that was passed for $60 billion that was being held up in Congress for 6 to 8 months. It would be nice to see evidence from Mr. Trump of some kind of support for a solution that is going to respect Ukraine. But I think it's going to be very difficult to see that, because in the equation, in a view between Russia and Ukraine, I think Donald Trump just sees Russia as a strong man, and that's what gains his respect. So I think Ukraine somehow needs to work on projecting strength. And interestingly, in my opinion, I think Donald Trump has been quite successful in projecting strength, but by not agreeing. He's constantly being brought into court for throughout his career for not paying his contractors because he disagrees, and this disagreeing apparently has gotten him quite a bit, quite far in life. So maybe there's some lessons. But of course, if we know anything about Donald Trump and his approach to diplomacy, he will most likely attempt to make a deal with Putin behind Ukraine's back because it's just, easier for him.
But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is confident that the United States, China and United Europe, that's what Putin fears. And Zelensky told in an interview with Polish media that Trump may put pressure on Russia.
I think that President Zelensky is being a very optimistic politician, and I then at the same time understand him and say that this is a good thing to say, projecting confidence. And it's true that, Putin is concerned everybody gets together against him. That would be bad. It's also doesn't quite look this way. I think right now, the visit from Kier Starmer of Great Britain is a real show of support. And I don't think I know Donald Trump has never been, at least in the last 3 years, he has definitely not been to Ukraine. And this is where Joe Biden is still ahead of both Putin and Trump, because Joe Biden has been to Kyiv. I mean, Yuri Rashkin's been to Kyiv. But where's Putin? Not working for him so well. Where's Trump? Not interested. I think that says something. And Kier Starmer, here he comes.
Trump has figured out how to end the war in Ukraine with the help of sanctions. Bloomberg learned about two scenarios for U.S. actions. It is noted that Trump is considering two main approaches to ending the war: weakening sanctions or introducing other goodwill measures that may be useful to Russian oil companies. And the second scenario, strengthening existing sanctions in order to put pressure on Russia. Maybe first or second scenario, which is more realistic? I think you will choose first scenario.
What gives you that idea? Yes, I think that
our communication.
Right. I'm like, yes. It would be nice if something was different, because President Biden is really leaving a lot of levers of power for the incoming administration and is giving them a lot of opportunities to apply pressure to Putin should they choose to. In fact, the list of sanctions has just grown. So clearly that is what the Biden administration thinks is going to get Putin to stop his murderous war in Ukraine. But on the other hand, the whole, if we look at President Donald Trump as wanting to have good relations with Russia, well, what would that take? Removing sanctions, returning Russian gold, restoring Russia to its not quite former glory, but to some kind of a respectable position, at least on the face of it, which is what Donald Trump was doing at the end of his first cadence as president, when G7 did not meet at the end because Trump he wanted Putin to be there. So I think that these steps have been consistent throughout his career, and he will look for ways to, it is consistent to expect him to make things easier for Russia as a way of persuading Russia to stop its murderous war. It seems kind of just strange if you say it out loud. If you think about it, like maybe we can just, pay this, more and more and more. And we see how different people deal with terrorists in different ways. But in this case, we see incoming President of the United States very willing to negotiate with essentially a terrorist. And it is disconcerting, but it also speaks of the situation that we have in the entire world, basically, when the world order, as we've seen it since World War II, is like going out the window, and we're seeing return of the age of empires. Then what was up is down, what was down is up. And now the United States clearly need to get to Greenland as quickly as possible because there is so much square footage of territory, which of course is apparently what has always been the most important thing. It's just we've been seeing things wrong. We thought that it's about quality of life for people, that people should live in whatever country better suits their interests. No, it's all about the size of your territory.
Dmitry Peskov responded to the statement of the candidate for the post of U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio that in the course of future negotiations to end the war in Ukraine, diplomatic concessions will be required from both sides, Kyiv and Moscow. And Russia's negotiation position on the settlement of the war in Ukraine was formulated by Vladimir Putin in June 2024. So Moscow doesn't plan to make concessions. This was stated by Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, and he concluded that there is nothing more to add here. So, what did Trump plan to talk to Putin about then?
It should be acknowledged that Senator and probably incoming Secretary of State nominee, current Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, is the main character in this particular play, in my opinion. And I doubt I'm alone, because Marco Rubio has not always been in agreement with Donald Trump. In fact, Marco Rubio started the idea of never Trumpers. Obviously, over time, he has found a way to make peace, but he's hardly viewed with trust by the MAGA. So getting Marco Rubio out of Senate and having somebody appointed, we just saw that there was just a recent announcement of a new senator to replace Marco Rubio, is already a victory for Trump, because it gives him a much more solid voice in the Senate than Marco Rubio was. And now that Marco Rubio is more than likely, practically guaranteed to be he's approved by the Senate, it's not clear how long he will be able to remain Secretary of State, how much ability he will have to do anything, considering that he is going to be restricted in his just actions, essentially, by other appointees that are going to be more Trump loyalists with Trump agenda, isolationist agenda. So Secretary Rubio, on one hand, is confirmed, is having a very easy time being confirmed by the Senate. And having watched some of the hearings, it was the most relaxing I've seen a Senate in quite a few hearings, because they kind of presume that the Republicans are going to support him, and even Democrats are probably going to support him, because he seems, Marco Rubio is one of the either not quite adults in the room, but at least sensible children, big children, that we can hope for will not do something absolutely terrible. But it is easy to dismiss a secretary, much easier than it is to get rid of a senator that you don't like. So I think that Marco Rubio is going to have a lot of difficult meetings where he will be promoting things that he might not like or support, but then he also showed to have a very flexible spine over the years. So maybe he will do great. Maybe he will be the messenger for the Trump world, and being really second. I think that Ukrainians actually know this pretty well, because I think that the State Department is going to change from the more polite Anthony Blinken mindset to, I'm guessing, more Lavrov, Zakharova, Russian kind of an approach of being more projecting strength through harsh language. I don't know if Secretary Rubio is going to be able to function if he's a transitionary figure in this kind of a slippery slope situation that already led the Department of Defense to be probably led by retired Major Pete Hegseth and a TV host. So I think that there's a certain slippery slope that we're going to be observing, and who is going to replace Marco Rubio and how long that's going to take. Perhaps is a rush to judgment, but it's hard to imagine Mr. Rubio being there for a long time. And as far as policies and statements that he's making right now, he's doing his best to say what he feels Mr. Trump would want him to say. And therefore, he makes a lot of statements about how Europe needs to make more payments for its own defense, and how those kinds of assurance statements, which at this point, it's hardly even anybody argues with anymore. It's just a question of, if the payments are not being made, does it mean that the United States is not going to fulfill its obligation per NATO agreement? Because during the election campaign, some things were said that could make people question whether the United States is going to follow through on its obligations. And at that level, 5%, 10%, 2%, does it really even matter? So I think Secretary Rubio is going to have a very tough job defending policies he's not going to like, and taking blame for any failures, because, of course, Donald Trump is never wrong. So people around him will have to take blame for whatever is happening that doesn't go well. And this is going to be another story of how people trying to survive in the Trump world.
But we will try to survive really in a different world. We can do it. Yuri, thank you very much for this conversation. We will meet after inauguration of Donald Trump, so in new world really, in all spheres, and we'll discuss these changes we are expecting now for. Thank you.
Absolutely. The clock will strike midnight, and then we'll meet in a week and see what world we live in. Can't wait.
But it will be interesting anyway. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Thanks for all our viewers for joining to us. My name is Irina Uzlova. This was Yuri Rashkin with me, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, communication instructor at the University of Wisconsin, and a country supervisor in Rock Country, Wisconsin. Thank you guys very much. Take care. Thank you so much.